Hey there, this is our first video for pre-algebra. We're looking at problem solving here. We're going to look at a four-step process. This four-step process is one that you see across the country. If you go into math classes or even a lot of science classes and you look on the walls, you're liable to see a poster, and it's going to probably have these same four words on it. Now, the way this is taught varies a little bit. What we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of look at a really straightforward. I'm gonna kind of talk you through the four steps in our problem solving process. Excuse me. And for each, and also as well as kind of this high level idea of what it is, we're gonna kind of give some practical steps for, in a math class or in a science class. This is kind of what that means in a word problem, right? And so we're going to kind of have this high level idea along with some specific steps that you can use. And so our first step in our problem solving process is to understand the problem. This makes sense, right? We're trying to tackle a problem. And in math class, we're talking about word problems, really, is ways to solve word problems. That's kind of the foundation there. And so understand when we're talking about a word problem, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about identifying the variables and things. Oh, I have clicked the wrong button. There we go. So identify the variables. Identify variables. And what do we mean by variables? We're going to get more specific with that word later, but we're going to kind of introduce some things before we introduce some things. We do that sometimes in math, where we kind of get a piece of a concept and then we dive deeper into a concept. In fact, honestly, that's kind of the entire high school math experience, where we learn a little bit here, and then in the next class we kind of expand this little bit into more bits, and we just kind of keep expanding and we dig deeper and deeper and make this thing a bigger thing, right? And that's what we're going to do here. So variable, we're talking about things that are unknown. So in the N-O-W-N, unknown, right? Sounds right. I don't know. If I misspell something on the video, you're welcome to stick something in the comments and give me a hard time about it. I don't know. It's fine. We're just flying by the seat of our pants here. That's an N, I promise. Unknown. Or anyway, we're identifying unknown. So basically, in the simplest possible terms, variables are what we're looking for in the problem. And, and this, one thing I didn't say at the very beginning when I was introducing this is this problem solving strategy, especially doing it with some of the puzzle pieces that I'm going to introduce to you here, this can be used from this class all the way till like your senior year and beyond. Even, you take some of this really math heavy courses like physics, and you can use this exact same problem solving strategy. And so in this case, in our next lesson, we're going to put more meat on this. We're going to solve some problems and use this strategy and use some other strategies to solve problems. But what we're really doing here is, so say we have a problem, and in this problem, we have a cat, right? There might be some sort of cat here, and we got to make him a little bit ugly because it's a cat, right? Cats are evil. Oh, wait, he's got to have whiskers. Okay, now he's a cat. So we might have a cat, or we might have multiple cats or whatever. And so what we're talking about, we're identifying variables, unknowns. We want to do like maybe cats equals something, right? And so something a lot, and we'll put more meat on this as we continue and we do more specific problems and whatever. This is just kind of giving us a framework. And you want all the things that are unknown, and any numbers that it gives you in the problem, we want to label those and we want to give them a name. And you're going to see our generic variables. You may have already seen this. You may not have already seen this, depending on your course. And that's totally fine. But our generic variables are things like X and Y. And we're going to learn a lot about that later in this course and whatever else. But when we're talking about understanding our problem, it's much more useful, and this is the way I teach these things, is to use meaningful variables. So if we're talking about cats, use a C, right? If we're talking about, the classic problems of Jeff had 20 watermelons, right? Or whatever. So if we have a watermelon, this is going to be a watermelon. Or maybe baguettes. He had 20 baguettes, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. We might use B, right? B for baguettes. He had 20. B equals 20. So we'll have this whole list of everything everywhere there's numbers in a problem, we may want to go through and list all those with a variable for what those are. So that's the understanding part, understanding what's going on in this problem. Where are we at? What's happening? Why in the world does Jeff have 50 watermelons? What's he going to do with all those watermelons? Put some watermelons back, Jeff, or sell them or whatever. So we're trying to figure out what's going on. And practically speaking, the way we do that in most of the time in our word problems is we list our variables like this. We'll have a little list of this equals this number, this letter equals that number, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll get a list going on. And we'll see this more and more as we look through some things. So that's the first step in our problem solving strategy is understand. Our second step in our problem solving process is to make a plan. So at this point, when you have been understanding, you should have some sort of list for like with variables. You know, you got in our things, we've got cats equals, let's say we've got 30 cats. So we're in hell, basically. We just kidding. We've got 30 cats, and what do we have? We had baguettes. We've got 20 baguettes for whatever reason. This is a thing that's happening. Maybe the cats are going to eat the baguettes. They're going to be excited about it because human food is exciting to our pets, right? Whether they're lovely dogs or horrible cats. Either way, they like human food. So that's what's going to happen with there. So the plan part, at the early portions of this pre-algebra class, the formulas that we're going to use are really simple and really straightforward. And so the plan part is we get a plan for how we're going to do this. Now, what I teach, and this again, I'm teaching you a framework that works now till forever. And so in the plan portion, what we're going to do is we're going to collect matching formulas or equations. And by collect, that might mean, let me get the words out. Let me get this written down, and then I'll start that sentence over. How does that sound? Great? Good. Collect matching formulas and or equations. Okay. So we might have, we made up a really, really random thing here, but we may have in our formula sheets or whatever, we may have some formula, in this case, where baguettes times 3 equals cats. I don't know. I'm making nonsense up. Whatever else. So we may have, so whatever formulas we have, and by matching them, what we're talking about is we want to look at, we'll have over the course of this course and other courses, we'll have kind of a list somewhere of formulas, right? Formulas that we're getting. We may have note cards, or we may have it on a sheet or whatever. We've got formulas. We've got things that are happening, or we may need to build an equation. We're going to learn more about that in a lesson coming up soon. But we are going to have all these different formulas on here. And so what you're trying to do when you're trying to pick which one of these 30, 40, 50, maybe just 3 or 4 or formulas, which one do we use? We got all these formulas. So what you're trying to do is you're going to match the units up. So in this weird hypothetical baguette cat formula, we're trying to find, okay, which one of these formulas has both cats and baguettes in it? So when we find the one that has cats and baguettes in it, that's the formula that we need. So you're trying to match up the units. And this is really important. And I want to stress this. If you know, I feel like if junior or senior level physics students would watch this and get this one concept, this one right here, they could do 80 to 90% of the work if they just learn how to match units. And I have taught students, and I've repeated this over and over. I remember one girl in particular where, you know, I would teach this and preach this and teach this and preach this and then match the units. This units is in your given, and then we're going to match up these units. And if you can do that, you can solve the problem. Easy peasy. And once she finally got that, she started making A's on tests, from making like C's to go into making like A's. So if you will learn to match the units, and we're talking about what they are. So we're talking about in real math problems, we may not be talking about cats and baguettes. There's probably not going to actually be a formula with cats and baguettes. I hate to break it to you. I know some of you are cat lovers and would love to see a formula that had cats in it. We're probably going to have formulas that have things like distance, so feet or yards or miles. We're probably going to have formulas that have things like time in it, like how long in seconds or hours or whatever. So things like that. So you're matching it up and trying to pick which formula matches those things. Again, this lesson, some of y'all are probably like this at home, right? Some of y'all are sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? I am going to fail this class. This lesson, need to stress and take a pause before we hit the last two steps of our problem-solving plan. This lesson, this very first lesson, we're just kind of laying some framework and getting some groundwork. And if you're in my class, your homework that you're assigned, you're going to be doing some problems. You're going to do your best to identify some variables and and it's going to ask you to just list some stuff and get a frame. We're trying to get a framework. In the next lesson, we'll get more strategies and even more strategies, some specific kind of techniques to use to solve problems. We're going to be practicing this all year this year in various word problems and varying things. We're just kind of getting some groundwork laid. So don't stress if you're not perfectly there, because we're going to be practicing this all year. So I want to make sure you understand that. I want to stress that very heavily at this point. So let's finish out our problem-solving plan, because this is a 4-step plan. We have understand, we have plan, and then our third step is to solve. Okay? And so we're not going to even spend much time talking about this one. So in this context, in a math context, what we're talking about when we're saying solve is we're basically saying do the math. So you have your variables collected, you've got your information, you've got A equals this, you've got B equals this, whatever else, C equals this. And you're almost always going to have like a C equals, I don't know, because you're going to have some unknown, right? And then you would have collected the formulas like A times B equals C. And then you would have plugged in numbers. And so do the math is we just stick in the numbers and we do the math. And that's all we're talking about in the solve step, is doing the math, right? So the fourth and final step is to check your work. So there are two things. One is when we're going to learn this later in this course. We're going to learn about solving equations and doing some of those things. In the earlier parts, you're just going to multiply a couple of decimals together, or add a couple of fractions, or multiply some integers. We'll learn what that means in lessons to come. But you're going to multiply, or you're going to add, or you're going to divide, or you're going to, there's going to be one or two things that you have to do, right, in these early phases of this course. Later, when we learn about equations, there may be a 2 or 3 steps that you have to take. But towards the beginning, there's going to be not very many things. So after you've done the math, the number one thing that I want to say in this fourth and final step, the check step, is what I want you to do is ask yourself this question, and that is, does my answer make sense? Okay, so that's what you're going to ask yourself at the very end. You there again when we learn about equations later on in this class, as you'll learn ways to check those and more specifics on how to check that. But the biggest thing that we want to keep in mind when we're thinking about a plan for problem solving in this check step is, does my answer even make sense? You know, in the cats and baguettes, that silly thing or whatever else, where you might be seeing how many baguettes each cat can eat, and if you get an answer like each cat can eat 50 baguettes or something, that doesn't make any sense, right? That's a crazy answer. It's somewhere you're like, I don't even know what a baguette is. It's a skinny long piece of bread. It's kind of like French bread but skinnier, right? That's what a baguette is, in case you don't know. But so you're whatever it is, and again, we're probably not going to actually see problems with cats and baguettes, right? But excuse me. But we might have a problem where it said, okay, we're trying to figure out how fast Johnny can run. And if we end up with an answer at the end, Johnny can run 20 miles an hour. Well, does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense for most people to run 20 miles an hour, or even worse, like, oh, Johnny can run 100 miles an hour. Does that make sense? No. Okay, well, then you need to go back and check to see you made a mistake somewhere in your calculations. Either your plan was wrong because you didn't have the right formula, you didn't pick the right formula, or didn't pick the right operation. Again, at the early parts, you may have multiplied when you should have divided, or added when you should have or whatever. You may have made a mistake there, or you may have done your math wrong, and you may have looked and you said, okay, 8 times 7 is 78. Well, 8 times 7 isn't 78, it's 56. So you made a mistake either in the solve part and you calculated something wrong, or you made a mistake in the plan part. And so if your answer doesn't make sense, you made a mistake. You need to go back and check it. And so that's it for our plan for problem solving. It's got 4 steps. It's got understand, and then we've got plan, we've got solve, and then we've got check. And again, this is a strategy that you see all over the place in all kinds of classes, and it will serve you from now until the end of your academic career, and honestly beyond, because it's pretty straightforward and pretty useful. So that's it for this very first lesson in pre-algebra. We'll see you in the next one, where we learn a few more strategies for problem solving. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.